Hi, this is tape 14 of the 1993 Shop Series. We're going to pick up the construction where we left it off on the last tape. Making up some landing gear legs, making up spare flaps, etc., etc. Doing the final assembly of the airplane, getting it ready for its first flight. We'll start the video off with a minute or two of pictures. These are from the 85 Nats, and this is one of my favorite people, Bob Gieske. Maybe my favorite person, who knows. Bob Gieske, 5-time national champion, 2-time world champion, and I don't even know what good to say about him. One of the classiest guys in stunt. Possibly the classiest guy. And of course this is the classic Bob Gieske stunt pattern. Slow, very precise. I mean, is there anybody out there that hasn't built a Gieske Nobler? My God. Nice pictures. These were donated by Joe Ortiz, by the way. Yeah, you figure it out. That'll make you crazy too. This was Paul Walker's 1985 entry. Paul got second that year. Nats were at Westover, and they were a good one. Finals were held in stone dead air, and it definitely favored certain people got the good air, certain people didn't get the good air. The people that got it took advantage of it. Paul put in some real good flights that year, if I remember right. He has Don McClave giving him a launch on finals day. But Jimmy nosed him out right at the end. This was my entry and the concourse winner from that year, the Killer Bee. Looks like Chuck Holzapfel giving me a launch here. A nice shot of all the planes on finals day here. Yeah, before we actually get into the video, by now you should have everything tracked, and I'll finish out these last few pictures that Joe loaned me to put on the front of this video. These were the winners of the 85 Nats. Jimmy was the overall winner. Nice shot of Jimmy's plane that year. Super Tiger 60, of course. Solid lines. What can I say? Man flew the wings off of this plane. Did a good job that year. And the air that day was dead. It was tough flying. Alright, everybody should be all tracked in. Get the VCR tracked in. Get the pizza out. Order the beer. Get the wife put to bed. Let's do video. Let's go down to shop and let's shoot some video. Okay, we're back down to shop, and today we're going to make up some landing gear legs. We started bending the wire the other day. We'll hope we can finish up the little grass gear doors, finish up the finish on the flaps, finish up whatever assembly is worth, maybe even get a day down to machine shop to work on the header. Now today I made up some, on a previous video we did the wires for this, I made up some little gear doors. They're 64th plywood on both sides. Roughened up the wire inside. Lay one flat, take a triangle, make sure it's 90 degrees. Put the piece of 1/8 inch balsa wood in, and then cap it with a piece of 64th plywood. Now when you see, I put a little angle in the front of this to kind of fancy it up. This stiffens up the wire quite a bit. It's a good idea to roughen up the wire with a Dremel tool. Use hot stuff on it. And I'm just gonna finish this off with a few coats of dope today. And this pretty much is just going to be a temporary grass gear setup so we can get out and fly the plane and establish the CG. And once we establish the CG, then we can make up the final set of wheel pans. Got the new flaps are in filler coat, and I'm going to pretty much sand them today. Maybe get the silver on today. I don't know. We don't have a lot of time today. And try to get down to shop later today or tomorrow. Got a lot of work to do here. And while this is drying, we'll try to make use of it by having a good day at the shop. I just put some blue on these, silver and blue. Got a coat drying up. We got the old flaps drying over here. And this looks like it's pretty much going to be what we can get accomplished today. Finish this up. And tomorrow we're looking to go down to machine shop. I don't know if we're going to get any really thing accomplished. We have an awful lot of work to do. Probably spend the rest of the day on making belt cranks up over here. Got to make up some belt cranks. Kind of like just a mundane, routine job. And then when we go down to shop, we have to injection mold some. Well, we'll see if we can get some of this on video tomorrow. Now the paint is dry and I'm just assembling the wheels on the little landing gear legs. I made an aluminum bushing for inside these wheels. These are 2 1/4 inch grass gear. And of course a little bit of WD-40 is a good idea. And I always polish up the little wheel collar, so if I want to change the wheels at the field for bigger or smaller, I can do that. And when I'm all finished, I'll buff it out with a little bit of Gorms and get it installed on the plane. Now I just want to try to grind a little bit of a little notch here with the parting wheel, so that the set screw can sit down in there. Even if it loosens up a little bit, it can't slide off. A little safety feature just like we do on a horn. Got aluminum bushing in the wheel. And then the final thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put the wheel collar on here, get the clearance set just right, and then over tighten the screw till it snaps right off. Well, I want it to snap off just to make sure that, you know, the last thing I need is in the middle of a flight have a wheel come off. And I don't want to tell you what all that thrill that can be, landing a plane with wing gear, especially in grass with one gear leg sticking out with no wheel on it. It's just a safety thing. Here, I just over tighten the screw, the set screw, and it snaps right off. But now if I want to get these off, I need to get real pliers or vice grips and just pull them right off. Now when you want to make a Dave Brown wheel, a square edge wheel, into a round wheel, and of course this lightens the wheel considerably. You can radius off all the corners. You can thin the wheel. I'm just doing this on a normal grindstone, a belt sander, or anything. Chuck it in an electric drill and just hold sandpaper on it. Hold it on a little bit of an angle like I'm doing and just spin it around. You can make the wheel actually any size and shape you want. And what I do, I try to get that final, so it's nice and smooth, that final clearance in there without a lot of slop. Although a little bit of slop in the wheels does help, especially if a plane doesn't track just right. Nice little trick here, you can do this. Then I guess the next step is we can fit these up to the plane, fit the little gear doors and get all the paint out of the threads, get this installed on the plane. What I did, I put the gear in the wing, put on the little doors, cleaned all the paint out of the threads and whatever. Another thing now is I'm going to take the plane outside. It's really cold out there. I'm not going to do it on camera because I'm alone here. And just push it forward and see that it rolls kind of straight, that everything's tracking the way it should be. The wheels seem to spin real nice. It seems like we have clearance for a full 13-inch propeller as in what we originally wanted. And the last thing now is the job we're going to do down at machine shop tomorrow with the header. We want to put the offset in the header and kind of button up the nose, and I guess at the beginning of next week we'll pretty much be ready to go flying. Get a hold of John or somebody, or take the stooge, and we'll try to get this baby out and get some test flights on it. Now, there's one real interesting thing happened in the time that we've been off camera. I was talking to a fella that makes lettering stencils, just like this, and he's going to make me up some computer-generated lettering stencils, I hope, and I'm going to try to videotape how he did it. And what happened is I found out he's going to be doing, later on this month, he's going to be doing a club demo of how the machine actually works right at the club, and I think I'm going to go down and probably get 15-20 minutes of video on how he does it. You may or may not want to have a set of letters. He can do nose art like this, he can do checkerboards, he can do letter sets, he can do really anything from what he says. And I'd like to run a little test. Maybe I'll run a little test on the number 2 plane that's sitting over there in gold, just so we have it on video, and possibly even talk him into making up a video that he can promote his products with from the footage we take. So we'll take care of that too. Joe Adamusco just sent me this picture of his cardinal, and really do like the paint job. Anyway, I want to share this with you. This is a 60 size cardinal that he's been building for the last year or so. All Pro Stun products, of course. And when he actually comes down to test fly this guy, we're for sure going to be videotaping the test flights of it, and just about anything else we can get. Needless to say, if you've seen some of the other videos, I think the Coxsackie video, all of the things Joe does are absolutely top drawer, and this looks like just another fine piece of work, and I hope he leaves it to me in his will. Anyway, one of the things I want to do before we go down to shop, because we're going to finish out this day, I have about an hour left here, I wanted to make a little chart to show you how to set the landing gear up on a prototype test plane. And it's the method Jim Greenaway uses, and we'd like to get that on the video too. It's certainly useful information. Now, one of the things that I found to be very true, and we're just going to make a little outline of a typical stunt ship here, generic stunt ship. People set up, this will be the center of gravity. People set up a stunt ship, especially a new one, a prototype, and they have several options of where to put the wheels. First off, you can use the plans, and if the plans work well, that's fine too. But if we lay this plane up, so this is a parallel line to the ground, and then we do a plumb line from the center of gravity, and then we measure forward 15 degrees. And this again is for a prototype design. This is the part at which the wheel should intersect the ground. And this will usually give you good grass landings. Grass. And if I go back over all the planes I had that had this 15-degree angle plotted out, usually it's a lot easier to do when you draw the plans. When you use this 15-degree angle, first off, the plane doesn't tend to do this nose over when you land in the grass. You don't break up, and of course we've all done that, break the front of the cowling, break the prop. So the plane just lands. This is a good basic number is the 15 degrees, and this is for grass landings. But now what I've also found to be very true, when I want to set a ship up to land on the wheels and hold a tail wheel up right to the very last second and then drop the tail wheel, or landing relatively fast, or make up wheel pants. Well, then I want to have this to be less, and probably it's more like 10 degrees. Again, this is an angle you really can't, I can't give you a number right now, because usually I would fly the plane with bare wire or grass gear, which I already have, and then move the gear forward, back, until I find a point at which it lands real nice. As soon as I find a place that lands real nice, then I go home, the wires and the wheels, and carve up a set of wheel pans. That's the best, safest way to do it, if you have all the time in the world. Now, some of the things that can be wrong, and we'll just make this real quick, some of the things that can be wrong if you don't do it that way is you go home and make up a set of wheel pants, and then by the time you bend them forward or back and get the angle that you want right, the wheel pants look like this, or they look like this, or they toe in or toe out. It's always safer to go fly the wires, get the plane to land exactly the way you want, then use those wires and wheels, go home and get the wheel pants parallel to the fuselage. That's an important cosmetic thing. Also, it's important that the plane lands right. And I can remember many ships that I've made years ago, and just to sketch this out real quick, and I'd purposely put the wheels real far forward like this and then make the wheel pan so it would land on grass nice. And what would happen with this deal is you'd break off the back of the wheel pan. From it springing up, this piece is always going, this is always going down. Stan Powell used to put staples in the back and the front of his wheel pants to keep them from wearing out. Well, all of this, if you use the old system, which we've just done, we've made up a set of gear that roughly are at 15 degrees ahead of the plumb line of the vertical CG. And of course what this means is as you move the CG further and further back, the gear have to come back. So the first step would be in any realistic program is number one, set the CG before you really go make wheel paint up. Get the CG exactly where you want it. And now this is fine. If you've flown last year's plane and you know exactly where the CG is, or you're going to build off, say, of an Aries, and you know where the landing gear should already be, well, that's great. But set the CG where you want, and then do the wire, and fly the wires, make sure it lands okay, and then make pants. Now, all three of those things, it seems like a very long, time-consuming thing, but when you see a plane that has wheel pants and you can just grease it in every time, you can be pretty sure the guy took his time, or he worked through 2 or 3 designs, improving each one, fooling with each one. Now, if you have fuse gear, it's even easier. When you make the bottom of the body and you put the 2 blind nuts in, you can put 6 or 8 blind nuts and just keep moving the whole gear assembly forward or back. We don't have fuse mounted gear on this, so we're not going to use this as an option. But this is one of the ways of getting it. Having the gear in the right position is the most important part of not having a ship bounce on a landing. Now here's exactly what happens when you bounce a landing. The CG is right here, the center of gravity. And if you have the gear coming way up too far forward, when they're way too far forward, what happens, and the tail wheel is sure, you're coming in for a landing, and the wheels hit first. And there's an upward force at the wheel. And what it does, when it hits, it pitches the plane up. For that split second, when it pitches the plane up, the wing has a greater angle of attack, and all of a sudden, whee, and it goes boom, 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 boom. And you've got a 6 bounce landing. We've all done that. When you have the landing gear too far back, what'll happen is you'll almost get to a roll and it'll almost stop. It'll hit a little bump and nose over and hurt the cowling. What in reality, when you're landing on tar, you'd like to have the gear as far back as possible, as far as you can reasonably get them back possible, without having to run the risk that it's going to nose over and either break your beautiful prop or your front of your cowling or whatever. And this is a very fine adjustment to get this just right. Believe me, you're not going to get this right on the first shot. I've fooled with landing gear wire endlessly to get those nice smooth landings, and when it just lands on tar, holds the tail wheel up, drops it down. It's more than just a random thing. And certainly before you would go make up all the work of making wheel pants, you want to have that established exactly where it's going to be. Again, the point I wanted to make is that the landing gear position, forward and aft, and the tracking is a significant thing. Now, one of the design features of a Cardinal, and if you want to look at this, that's not unique, but it's certainly not all planes, is the wide track of the landing gear. The wide track really lets it land real nice. If you look at the Mass Cup, we have some real nice pictures of Midgley's ship landing that it just lands by itself with the wide track gear. When you get the wires bent right into the right spot, either grass or tar, you can really land that baby nice. It's just one of the features of the Cardinal that I really like. Alright, well, we're going to load up the truck and hopefully get down to machine shop and work on our header, get some projects underway. So we're down at the shop, and John DeTavio is making up some precision horns here for Mr. Paul Walker. Of course, what we feel like doing is giving Paul the cheapie, make him a ratio he'll never use. Now these are made to within thousandths. These are going out to Paul Walker, making them up right now. Joe K is making up a tool to put the offset in the VMAX headers here. Now the purpose of this trip today is we want to make up the headers and get the right angle in the headers here. We brought the plane down. They have a couple extra motors. As I said before, we're making up some special horns. Horns for Paul Walker, horns for one of his friends. Building an impact that has different ratios than a pattern master. We got the extra VMAX here. We're going to do the machining on all three of the headers and then send them out to be anodized. And we may even get to if we get done early here, we'll run down to the anodizer and give you a little look at how to anodize aluminum. That ain't gonna work.
High-tech stuff here, man. Yep.
Ah, come on, zero it in, John, zero it in. This is going to Paul Walker. We don't want to have it off even by a tenth of a thousandth. Yeah, drill a hole, baby. Yeah, drill a hole.
Oh boy, Paul, you got it made.
Come on. Now this is our new shop, of course. This is 3,500 square feet of production equipment. Just want to take a little walk around and show you the some of the facilities we have available here to make up custom stuff, make up custom parts, and the kind of work we can do right in the house here. We don't send anything out. This is the molding room. These are the machines that we actually use to make the belt cranks and the line reels, things of that nature. Everybody that works here is a modeler of some kind anyway. Joe K is the proprietor, of course. This machine in the back is a Nissi injection molding machine.
Now Darryl Talley is doing something for you along with me. You know, you pick up the papers. We get out here. It took us forever to get out of here yesterday, but we pick up the papers, and here's Darryl splashed all over them right away from the Sunday night.
I just hope you enjoy spending a minute or two looking at our shop. Some of the things we do down here, everybody that works here, of course, is a modeler. Some of the people that work in here have been working on models and things 40, 45 years. That's some real nice stuff here. It's a neat place to work. done is program in the coordinates for the mill operation here. And the milling machine's running right off the computer. And the 4 headers we have to do today will all be exactly alike. There'll be no human hands touching the machine while this operation's being done. Keep in mind, any rear exhaust engine you have, and that's why I'm showing this, you have to machine the offset into the header. Or the header goes into the plane crooked, or you wind up that you can't put any offset in it. As you can see, this is showing where the cutter is going on the milling machine right now. It's traveling through its range of motion. All computer generated to do VMAX headers. This is unbelievable. I just thought you'd enjoy seeing this and seeing what our shop looks like down here since we just moved in the last year from the old shop. The old shop was on some of the tapes. We do have a CAD cam now. We do have this automatic milling machine, so there might be some time in the future you'll need a part specially machined or made, and we'll have it for you. And here we bolted up a header into its final position. You can see right now it's going right down the center of the body. And we'll get on with it. We have some other special jobs to make for people here today, and we'll get busy on them. Just thought you'd enjoy seeing some of this little stuff if you've never been down to the shop here. May give you a little insight into what we can and can't do here. Some of the stuff that's available to you. Now we got all the offset milled in all the headers. They're all exactly the same. We test fit them all in a plane. Ready to start working on some Venturis. And what we're going to do is make up some Venturis for the 51s. These are just blanks, some for the 60s and some for the VMAXs. That'll be the next job here. And we should be done for the day. Alright, we're back from the shop. I hope you enjoyed the little visit there, making up these headers and Venturis and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is send this out to George, get it anodized, get the Venturis anodized red, get the header pipes anodized black. Just make it a little dressier than it normally would be. Now for the last couple of days the clear was drying on our new flaps. These are the thin flaps. So I think I'll spend a little bit of time today. Expect Don Patterson over here tomorrow with his plane for a repaint. And so we're going to sand this down and hopefully get it buffed out, and then we can actually, when we get the headers back from George after they're anodized, we can actually get the bench trimming done on a plane. We can kind of show how we get it bench trimmed and ready for its first flight. I put the hinges in the new flaps today. Well, as I started saying before the phone rang, I have all the WD-40 in the hinges now. Everything's just getting ready to buff the flaps out. And I'll kind of get ready to do the bench trim. In fact, maybe what I'll do is I'll put a little bit of the theory of bench trim and a model on this while we're waiting to get the headers back from the anodizer. And we can get that done today. Every plane, when it's at this stage, you're tempted to just stick the motor in and go fly it, but it really should be bench trimmed. And for people not familiar with that, we'll try to put a couple minutes of that on the video. Now, this may or may not be a word that you're familiar with, but I just want to explain, and this is basically the way that Big Jim Greenaway and I have done this over the past 7, 8, 10 years, whatever. We have a new model. The new model is finished, and it's ready to go. Well, everybody's dying to go fly it, that's for sure. But we want to do a thing called bench trimming. Bench trimming means you assemble a model. You do the complete assembly. And I'll just make a little diagram here because this is going to be an important thing. This is kind of an important concept. You know, if I just can't explain how important this is because I've seen so many go wrong. Bench trimming a model, you go out and fly a brand new model. These are just typical examples of things that can go wrong. You have your beautiful brand new model, yeah, you're ready, run out to the field, start the engine, run out to the handle, guy lets it go. 30 seconds into the flight, you have a dead lean where there's a little piece of junk caught in a filter, and by the time you land after 30 minutes, bingo. Well, the idea of bench trimming a model, number one, and these are not necessarily in the order that it should be done in, but these are all steps before that first flight. One of the most important things I would do is run on the ground. A little bit on the rich side. Hold the nose up, put the nose down. Get 2, 3, maybe even 4 runs on the ground, especially if it's a pipe plane. Check all the zip ties. Check the bolts. Now what typically happens, especially if you've gone and, and tightened up all the bolts in the shop and you're kind of excited and get out to the field, after 3 runs, you might want to recheck the bolts, tighten the cowling bolts. Now this all sounds like, oh yeah, I know that, yeah. But the first time you go out to the field and have the good old-fashioned lean run and you cook the motor on the first flight, you'll be sorry you didn't bench trim the model. Typically when I run 2, 3, 4 tanks of fuel, and what I can do is I'll try to even show this on a video if I can. I go out to the garage or in a driveway, even do it on a rainy or a cold day. Get those ground runs in. Bring the ship back into the house. Check all the bolts. Check the cowl. Check the lead-out guide. Here's something that you don't really check. Check that it hasn't vibrated, loosened up. Give the plane a thorough going over. Oil the hinges. In our case, and we may try to show this on the video later if we can, tape the hinge lines. In fact, I will show this on a video. This is an important step. I like to fly the plane on the first flight with the hinge lines taped. I don't want to go out there and have a big gap in the hinges, especially with these hinges now. I have these take-apart hinges. I want to have the hinge lines taped. Cut the lines at home. I cut the lines in my driveway. I cut them on a cold and windy day. So when you go out to the field, you don't want to be like Mike Rogers. You go out there and here you have the best day. Bright, nice, sunny day. Everybody's flying, and you're cutting lines. No way, Jose. Now, given that you have all that finished, I would say this is the relative order that I would like to. I would like to see on the first flight the CG at between 15% mean average chord and 20%. Mean average chord. Somewhere in that range. That's where I want the CG. Step 1, I'll try to establish that. Second point, the vertical CG. Somewhere right in the center. Right in the center of the wing. And if you haven't, rather than go into detail on this, just go check the trim videos, flight trim videos for a good dissertation on this. CG number 1, vertical CG number 2. If the vertical CG is wrong, put heavier or lighter wheels, heavier or lighter wheel pants. Get these. If you have these 2 things right, almost everything else can be wrong and a plane will fly real good or decent. You want to try to get, at least in our case, slop or no slop. Remember we have that removable bushing. Some ships seem to fly a little bit better with no slop. When you have no slop, what happens is you have more elevator movement to flap movement. It increases. Having slop in effect, increases the amount of flap movement. You can pretty much figure that out on your own. The more slop you have in the controls, the less effective elevator you have. But we'll start off the trim flights, the first flights, with no slop in the control system. And these were just going on and on some of the things that we want to establish before we go fly the plane, before we actually go out and fly the plane. We want to start flying the plane with all the controls. Now, you know, a typical Pro Stunt handle has 5 adjustments. All the adjustments right in the middle. So if it doesn't turn equally, we can move this one up, this one down. We can obviously there's a million combinations, but we want to start all first flights with the controls in the center, just to see if we have any built-in. Remember, we also have that joint on the push rod, so we can adjust. If we don't want to do it at the handle, we can do it at the flap just by going in through the pipe tunnel, cut out that little piece of wood. We can get it that it's a trim feature that we can use to our advantage, whether we want to do it at the handle or at the push rod. Just one other trim feature we have in this ship. Now, these are what I'll call luxury items. When you really reach the zenith of stunt and you go to fly the plane for the first flight, you can use a proven motor. In our case, we have a brand new motor, so this will not apply, and a proven tank. And the shims that we used, and the shims. So what we can eventually do, and if it's a pipe plane, we can even use the pipe and the pipe length. These can all come. Now, this is a luxury item. What I could do, in effect, is take the green ship, take the motor, the tank shim, the pipe, and the pipe length, and just pull it out as a unit and put it in a new ship. That would get, you could even, and I would even say this is really getting a little too far, you could even use the prop. If you were going from a 70-ounce plane to a 70-ounce plane, you could use the prop. But in our case, we're going from roughly a 70-ounce plane to roughly a 60-ounce plane. So we'll be using a smaller prop, probably. But this is one of the nice luxury items you can use from, you know, if you have, let's say you built a stiletto. It flew great. You have the ST-46. You have the 6-ounce tank. You have a tongue muffler. Okay, now you build a new stiletto. Well, heck, it's great. Take the whole powertrain. Take the prop and the spinner if you're building the same kind of plane. Put it right in a new plane. Now, that'll mean you're not going to have to clean the tank. These are the things you're not going to have to do, is have junk in a filter. When you have a new ship, God, you've got enough things to worry about, tip weight and whatever. If you can take the whole power package and put it right in, it's a nice luxury trim option. Okay, tip weight. I always like to fly the first flight. If I anticipate I'll wind up with an ounce of tip weight, I always like to fly the first flight with maybe an ounce and a half, even 2 ounces. So that the first couple of flights, if the wing isn't perfectly level, if I'm a little nervous, in effect what I'm doing is between a half and an ounce of extra tip weight. If you're using solids, you might want to use a 1/4 ounce extra. That'll be enough. If you're using braids, minimum ½ ounce extra. This little bit of extra tip weight for the first real flights, it'll keep tension. If the motor quits at a funny point, if you get a lean run, a rich run, or if you're unfamiliar with the trim habits of the plane, that little extra tip weight will save your life. Extra tip weight for the first flight. I did a little bit on the gear track. Anyway, if you just take the airplane and push it on the ground forward, and it all of a sudden turns in at you, whoops, I would want to check this. But even if this checks out fine, and you have the little bit of extra tip weight in there, it probably won't come in at you. Another thing, too, you might want to do when your helper or the steward releases the plane, you might want to take a few quick steps back on a new plane, just to make sure if the wheels aren't tracking just right, and you don't know that yet. And stew on a landing. I've seen this happen on a landing. You have a brand new plane. The wheels are still a little stiff. Everything's a little stiff. The lead outs are a little stiff. Everything. So you have kind of a funky landing. As soon as you land, the plane comes right in at you, ground loops around, and you know, it either noses over or whatever, and you scratch up the cowling. Well, take a few steps back just when the plane touches the ground, pull on the handle just a little bit, just kind of keep tension on it. Safety stuff, safety stuff. Having this happen, that plane, the extra tip weight and the gear tracking and taking a few steps back will save you. And that's what we're trying to do, is get a safe first flight here on this guy. And this is last but not least of this bench trimming thing, is I take a prop. I always like to take a used prop. A prop that has several flights on it. I know doesn't have a funny balance or a funny tracking. A tracking problem where one blade is here and one blade is here when it's spinning. A used prop. I always want to start my flying with a used prop that I know isn't going to give me any funny vibration. Again, because I don't want a lean run. I don't want anything to go wrong on the first flight. I have enough things to worry about just trimming this plane and trying to get used to it. I like to get a used prop in there. That again is a luxury item. If you can get a used prop, and let's say, you know, for instance, you did a Nobler and you used a 10.6. Well, you know, this new Nobler, if it's the same thing, put a 10.6 on it. If you're in doubt, always put a little bit bigger prop. If say you have a 46 Super Tiger and you've used an 11.6, well, for a test flight, put 11.5/6 on. A little extra prop diameter can't hurt on a test flight. It'll just give you a little extra line tension, a little extra confidence. And it's getting that first flight over with and getting comfortable with the plane that's really important. And I always say this is last but not least. If you have a resident expert living by you, if you live next door to Billy Werwich or you live next door to Paul Walker or whoever, get them to test fly it. Now having an expert, if you're an advanced level, intermediate, or even if you're an expert, having somebody else fly your plane on that first day, whether it's the first flight, and usually around here I'm the one that gets to test all these new planes out, they will pick up a trim problem right away. A crooked flap, it's nose heavy, it's tail heavy, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. They'll pick up that problem right away and save you maybe that whole first day. You go out to the field, you'll fly 10 times, you won't really know if it's this, it's that, well, who knows? Somebody else, if you have Paul Walker fly your plane, or you have Fancher or somebody, they're going to go right away, that's wrong, fix that. And then maybe if it's things you can do right at the field, you can finish the day out and get some nice flights on a plane. You know, if you just fiddle around in the beginning, or if your ego doesn't want you to have help for whatever reason, you know, you're going to go backwards or stay stagnant or whatever. If you have an expert around, get him to fly your plane. Get him if he possibly can, to watch it even. If you don't want him to fly it, let him watch it. Help you trim it out. Get help. That's the best advice I ever give you. And don't resign it to one person. Don't just leave it for one. Get as much help from as many people as you can and boil down all their answers. Get help. Get that first flight over with. And that's what we're looking forward to right now. Is we're pretty much on the verge of getting this plane ready to fly. Even though we don't have the weather to fly it, we want to get it, every possible piece of it ready. Get our lines cut, the handle adjusted. This is all stuff we'll do off camera. We'll get the hinge lines taped. We want to get everything ready, so when that nice, warm, comfortable day comes, we're ready to go flying. Now, one of the few things left to do before we actually get to fly this guy, we want to tape the hinge lines up, and I wanted to go over what the procedure I use is. What I do is I take a little paper towel and force the flap all the way down, or elevator. Then I'll go cut, because the hinge line tape comes very wide. I'll cut the tape an inch or so thin, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and I'll wipe this with M600, get it wiped down, and then just apply it looks like Scotch tape. It's really, the only thing you're looking for in hinge line tape is that you don't have a glue that's going to pull the paint off, or that it's going to be so weak that it's going to come off in flight. So I'm going to do that right now. And then on the elevators, you want to obviously reverse this. You want the flap fully deflected, put the tape on and pull it back to neutral and work it. Now, there's always going to be that little sound, that click, 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 click. But I wouldn't let that worry me. You don't want the control stiff. You try to keep it as loose as possible. And the plane, I'd like to fly the first flight, the test flight, fly right away, right off the bat, no waiting. Right away it's going to have the hinge lines taped. Now, just to show, I put that piece of tape down. I'll just try to wipe this nice and easy without pressing, damaging the finish. The trick with any kind of tape, if you're in doubt, is go buy one roll of every kind of tape on the planet. Or you can use that hinge line tape that I sell, which no special reason to use that unless you can find something better. 3M packaging tape. There's a packaging tape that works real well. There's a repair tape, a 3M repair tape that works real well. There's some material that Ted Fancher had that worked real well. There's no reason to isolate only one type of tape. Try 3 or 4 different brands, do a little test on your own. Okay, take out. All that was to hold the flap fully deflected. Now you're going to hear that little noise. It'll work its way in eventually. Now the worst thing to do, some of the things never to use, and don't even, these are things I've done and I've really paid the price. The 3M tape that has a little fogginess to it, that Scotch tape that has a foggy look, when you go to take it off, forget about it. It'll take you all day to get it off. It's terrible. It sticks and it works fine, but you can never get it off. Now the trick is, if we want to go to appearance judging and you think this is an objectionable thing, take it off before appearance judging. You get back from appearance judging, put a brand new piece on. Tape is cheap. It's not a problem. It's easy to do. 5 minutes you can do the whole plane. When you go to do the elevators, I don't think I have my tool here. I'll have to look and see if I have my tool. One of the ways, oh, here it is. Ah. Always prepared, always ready. One of the things, and I'll show this on the video, in fact, never thought to show this. I made a hinge line taping tool. It's a piece of 16th plywood, and what I do is I take the wide tape before I cut it down. The flaps, of course, are easy to do. I wrap the tape around here and then use this to sink it down into the hinge line. And I'll show this on the video. This will be the easiest way. I wasn't going to show this, but I guess I should. I guess there are people that either have trouble doing hinge lines or could use the information. Let's put it on the video. Now you can see how thin we've cut the tape. This is the flap hinge line. But to do the elevators, you want the tape a little bit thicker. And we'll show that little tool. That tool has been handy. Yeah, you can do it without the tool, but it's a pain in the neck. The flap usually goes right on, no problem. The elevators, because of the thickness, it'll take a little more time. And you can, if you want to, you can get a brand new X-Acto knife and pop all the bubbles, make it real fancy, or you can just press them out, work them out. I don't spend a lot of time trying to make it fancy because when I go to appearance judging, I just take the tape off and then put new stuff on, and then I know I'll get through the nationals without having the tape get all ratty. And you got to check from time to time. This tape splits. The fuel or whatever gets on it, it splits, or from being out in the sun, I'm not sure. Alright, so here's our hinge line taping tool. Again, no big deal. This is 16th plywood. And it needs to be the length of the elevator or a little longer. In this case, this is a shorter than normal tail. Normally my tails are 30 inches, 32. This is 28, so. Now, we want to push this down as far down as it'll go. A little piece of paper towel usually would be a good thing for that. Now that'll hold the flap, the elevators, I'm sorry, in full deflection. And this allows you to do it on your own, by yourself. You don't need a helper. Of course, if you have a helper, if your wife or friend is around, just have them hold the controls in the opposite, the way that you're going to do this. Controls in full deflection. Wipe this all clean with some Sikkens M600. And we'll be ready to put the tape in. Now you can see what I've done. I've actually taped. This is the sticky side up. I've taped this piece to the hinge line tool, taped it at both corners. Now I'm just going to bend this right around. Okay, so I have this the tape with the sticky side out, and I just have the little tips of the Scotch tape holding it on. Usually it picks up some fuzz off the table. Now I can use that. I can bend the tape right around here. Take the little pieces of tape off. I can use the stick, kind of push it down into the hinge line here. It's a razor blade. And just get a razor blade and trim it up nice. And if this didn't work out, or if you have too many wrinkles in it, if you're not happy with the way it looks, well, just pull it off real carefully and do it again. And as long as you're using good quality tape, you won't have a problem. Now, this bothers a lot of people, this noise, this clickiness. After a certain amount of flights, after 100 flights, it goes away. It isn't a problem. It doesn't seem to affect the way the plane flies. Granted, it is annoying to hear it, but there's really not much you can do about it. It's the tape just sticking and coming off the painted surfaces. And like I said, in time it seems to go away. Okay, that should help you when you want to do your hinge line taping. Now I got the other side done. And what it usually takes now is a little bit of working this in. I think we could flip this over. They're really closing in on having this guy finished, and it's really been, the flaps are on, the thin flaps are on. When we test fly it, we'll bring the other set of flaps to the field for a few tests. Paint really came out very nice. I'm really very happy with the way the paint looks. A couple little spots to touch up here, and I guess before I pack it in for today, I want to run around and touch this guy up with some little spots. There's always spots where you seem to buff through on the edges. Yeah, right here's one. This is half of the fun of having a plane in this stage. Now, it doesn't have any fuel in it. It's really a virgin. It's really kind of like a fun thing to have. You walk around admiring it. And this is something I don't want to leave off the video. When I get to a point, in this point of building a plane and it's almost finished, and I'm walking around, I eyeball this thing from every angle, from every possible little direction, trying to find little spots that aren't buffed, little things that aren't just right. This is really one of the joys of having one of these things, having them around, just ownership or possession, whatever it is. It's just nice having them. And I just love having these things all around my house and all around. Regardless of whatever happens, good or bad in your life, it's neat to have these stunt ships around. Now, no matter how careful you are, I don't care how careful you are, there's always little spots that you seem to buff through. Now you can see this one right by the rudder here, by the rudder hinge line. So I'm going to look around here now. There's a little spot where we buff through. Now, one of the reasons we buff through so many spots on the back, here's a spot right here. One of the reasons we buff through so many spots on the back here is because we're trying to keep the back of it light. Remember when we did that little test to see if we were tail heavy or nose heavy? We knew this guy was coming out tail heavy. Now on this side, I think there's a spot right up here that I buffed through. So what I'm going to do is mix up some little, there's another spot there. We're going to get a little touch up with the airbrush. Let's see, look around the fillets. Usually the high points are where you buff through. And all the little spots where you're on the edges here, any of the spots where you're prone to buff through. You can touch it up with a brush right now, but a better thing is use an airbrush. Now here's a nice little tip with an airbrush. When you have an airbrush, this is Midgley's airbrush by the way. When you have an airbrush, it doesn't seem to want to spray. Just I took a coffee can and filled it with thinner. Just let it sit in there for a second or so. Take it out. Do it 3 or 4 times so it unclogs real nice and easy. And usually you'll see there'll be some junk in there that eventually comes out. It's a good way to keep the airbrush clean. Now when we're touching up like this, the Gorham's polish leaves a really nice clean surface. The paint really sticks to it. What we really want to have is just a minimum spray here. I don't want anything more than a minimum spray. Okay, so what I want to do is get real close now. And what I do is just hold up a, let's hope I can get this on the lens. And that one's gone. Now, there's a couple advantages of doing it this way. Now, of course, we're going to try to spray a little bit of clear on top of this too. That would be nice. And but this leaves the minimum amount of paint. Now, what's always a good idea, and I like to do it all the time, is wait till right before you leave for the Nationals, a week before you leave for the Nationals, M600 the whole plane down and go over all the spots you've buffed up. It's a good way to pick up an appearance point maybe. It's a good way to go out with a plane that looks prepared, ready to go, doesn't have all little telltale buff through signs on it. And as an ongoing thing, you're going to be buffing through from time to time, unless you wind up with one of these decoupage paint jobs with 4,000 coats of clear, and you're going to constantly be buffing through. Get used to, as you buff through, how to touch it up. The next day, you should be able to buff that right in, and you should never be able to see it when you're finished. And you really do wind up with an absolute minimum amount of paint this way. Get this side too while we're at it. Now, the real master of touch-up, the real master of keeping a plane new looking is Ski Dombrowski. Go look at his plane real close. There isn't one buff-through spot on the whole plane because he goes around touching it up. And he does an excellent job, and you can't tell where it's been buffed through and where it's been repaired. Now, I'm looking around the bottom here, see a couple of spots. And they always seem to be on the edges. The edges of things always seem to wind up taking a lot of abuse. But if you keep after them, and like I said, a week or two before the Nats, spend an evening. Go around the whole plane and touch it up. Give the judges one less thing to find objectionable. And really, when you do it this way, you're adding such a minimum amount of paint, it almost doesn't matter. You're not going to change the trim of the plane or anything, that's for sure. And you can go back and do this on an ongoing basis whenever necessary. There's a big spot here. No reason to have to live with buff through paint. Okay, so I hope, well, we got another one here too. As long as we're going to be fussy. Let's really be fussy. I've never had a plane yet that I didn't buff through at least one spot. And this way you've got a fighting chance of getting ahead on it. Alright, I hope that, I hope that tip's going to help you a little bit. Got a little spot right up here, in fact. I have a little time before the day's over here. I just want to go over the whole plane. All the little touch-out spots are dried up. Now I go over the whole plane with this product called Final Shine. This is a 3M product. Contains no wax and no silicone. And after a plane is buffed, this fills in all the little buffing scratches, leaving a nice shine. Now, it is an excellent thing to use just before appearance judging. And all I do is put some on a paper towel, Bounty of course. And just like you were compounding a plane out, and you'll notice this product fills in. It's made by 3M. You have to be careful if you're looking for some of these body shop products. You want a product that has no wax and no silicone. And Final Shine is one of the very few that has no wax and no silicone. The reason you don't want wax or silicone is right now we don't want to seal this surface, and if we waxed it, we would be sealing it. We'll wax it just before we take the first flight, or just before we put fuel in it and run the motor, so that we don't get the paint, that white streaks and things on it. But for right now, if we just go over the whole plane with Final Shine, and I like to just show, if you can see the difference in the finish here when one wing panel is done. It really does pay to spend some time with the Final Shine, but it has to be on paint that's buffed out, and preferably paint that you've done the 1200 sandpaper routine and the buffing routine, and save this for last. And this fills in any little imperfections, and it really leaves a nice mirror gloss on everything. So I just wipe this down. The finish on this plane is really starting to look nice now, starting to shine up. We have the hinge lines taped. Have all our parts out being anodized for the header. Midgley should be finishing up the pipe. In fact, we should have Midgley here next week. Looking forward to his visit. We'll see what his new plane looks like. Try to get some of his stuff on video. Okay, that's just one. I would guess that's about as good as we're going to get it for this afternoon. The Final Shine really does leave a nice shine on everything. And as I said before, this is the kind of thing you want to do just before appearance judging. Or just before you go out to the local contest, or just before you go to your little show or your club meeting or whatever, or just before your friend comes over to the house and you're trying to impress him with your airplane or whatever. It's a nice little final touch. This is Don Patterson's plane here. He's bringing it over here today. We're going to try to shoot some refinish on it. Sanding it down, sanding down all the finish. We're going to try to get it down almost to the silver before we actually repaint it. Awful lot of things have to be fixed on this. It's got a lot of abuse you can see on the leading edge. This has been on one of the previous videos anyway. But anyway, we're going to try to get some sanding done today. We got 3 people coming over for a sanding party. We'll get it all sanded down and give you a look maybe what it looks like when we get done painting it. This is Don Patterson from, we don't know where he's from.
Hello, how are you?
Chattanooga, New Jersey.
Chattanooga, New Jersey. Over here from Kew Gardens, right next over there by Paul
Just keep sanding. Just keep sanding.
By Paul Steels, we're doing a...
Yeah. We sent Don out for coffee, and he bought himself coffee. He didn't buy any for anybody else. So, just to give you an idea. Anyway, we got about 4 hours of sanding in this, and then we're going to try to shoot the thing. We did some little tests on the cowl and the wheel pants. They look real good. Doing acrylic lacquer and sanding the whole thing down, trying to get down to almost get most of the paint off or get it all roughed up. It's a thrill, huh, Don?
Right.
After a whole day of 2 guys sanding this plane, we finally got enough of it sanded down. Look at how many damaged things to the leading and trailing edge. Got all the damage fixed, detail, whatever. And we're ready to go shoot some acrylic on this. We set up some heat in the garage. We're going to do this guy out in the garage since it's really going to take a lot of paint to get all of the mistakes on this covered up. But we'll get them done, and we'll try to show you what it looks like when we're finished. Now we tested out the paint on the prop, and even though it was a freezing cold day, and we're talking super cold, this didn't come out too shabby. We had to run an electric heater all day, but I guess this is as good as it gets. This is a rebuilt 2-year-old plane. It's got a nice finish on it now. You should get a lot of years of service out of this. Just so cold out here, it's unbelievable. Alright, we're going to pack this in for the day and go have pizza. It's pizza time, baby.
The pizza party.
Now this is the best part of being pro stunt. Even Paul Walker doesn't have this much fun.
The end of a perfect day.
Do you think Zhang Dong ever ate a pizza all the time he was world champion? Hell no. Best part of the day, pizza time. Today we only have about an hour. What I want to do, I took the gold guy down. This is the number 2 plane. And what I want to do, maybe just put all the parts on, assemble the elevators and, you know, the removable hinges, just put some pins in them. Kind of get a look at what this is going to look like and start laying out my paint job. Remember, I wanted to do kind of an airbrush job on this. I haven't really decided exactly what I want to do. And I want to try to do a nice lettering job. We'll try to get it all on the video. But the first thing I'll do is assemble it and kind of get a look at it and maybe go over and do some Busso sketches on it. What I do, I just assemble a plane with a pin in the hinges. Just have all the hinges in temporarily here so I can, you know, do a little bit of layout on what I want to do for the paint job and stuff. And I'll get the cowling. I get the cowling and the gear doors and things. Just put everything together temporarily so it's all in one piece at this point. I got the whole plane put in one piece, and what I'm going to do first is try to lay out the shape of the canopy, get a little idea of what I want to do as far as the canopy goes on this guy. Now, just like we did on the previous video, I'm going to kind of lay this guy out with some 1/8 inch tape, move it around until I get pretty much the shape I want. And then I think I'll get out either some pearl or some metal flake, and maybe I can even get this painted up this afternoon. Kind of a cold, windy day out there. I'm not going to be able to do anything outside anyway. Now, I always try to hold this up in the position I have it now and kind of look down at the canopy before I actually lay it out in tape to get an idea how long I want to make it and how deep, and a general shape that I want to use. Just like I did on the #1 plane, lay out the shape that you ultimately want to wind up with 1/8 inch tape. And you can move it around as many times as you want until you have the shape that you ultimately want to wind up with. And I like to, of course, do the old thing. Like we're flying it. What does it look like while we're flying it? Now what I decided to do on this guy, I just want to mask off the canopy because I'm not sure what color I want to make it. So I just press down in here, and it gives me a perfect template for the piece of tin foil that I'm going to need. And then I'll put tape around the edge. Now if I pull that off, let me show that. If you notice, I have a template. You can see the tape line here, so I can just undercut it by just a little bit. Lay out some tape in there, and I won't get any extra tape touching the paint. Okay, there's the final shape that we wound up with, and now we'll just run a little piece of tape around the edge and stick it right in position. This tip alone is worth its weight in pizza. Here's a nice little way to mask off the canopy. Now we're ready to start airbrushing. And again, we're just going to be doing a little bit of experimenting on the bottom of the plane. We find out what color we really want to do this in. Now I got all my little jars of candy apple here, and I'm going to try to do a little airbrush work here and just get a feel for what's going to ultimately give you the paint job of this ship. I'm going to try to do most or all of it with the airbrush. Okay, the first thing I did is I painted the pipe tunnel black. That's all going to be black. And let the black stick out over the edge a little bit. Again, I just want to do the bottom, do a little bit of fooling around with the colors till I can finalize what color. Since I know absolutely nothing about how... Yeah, I just laid out some green to see what this is going to look like. Remember I did a test on this cowling not too long ago. It looked okay. Kind of like the green. Now I'm trying to come up with a color combination that's going to look good with the green. I just want to give, some little, about every 10 minutes, come over here and take a look at how this is shaping up. Because believe me, I don't have a picture in my mind's eye yet. This is coming totally freehand, a totally improvised as we go paint job. I got the first coat of green on the nose here. Trying to figure out some kind of design I can use on the nose. Now I'm trying to get one coat on everything here. You obviously need more than one coat on the green. That's the first coat. You let it dry about 10 minutes, and we'll get into the second coat. Now remember, always do the bottom first. If you're going to do experimental stuff like this, always do the bottom first. This way you get a feel for the colors you want to use, how much you have to put on, what pressure. Get everything dialed in before you flip it over and do the top. Found three colors here. I kind of mixed a little bit of this and a little bit of that, made myself up a gold color. And I'm using a candy apple red from the original Cardinals. And I'm just kind of improvising on this as I go. I want to make all my mistakes on the bottom. I want to do all the things I want to do on the bottom, of course. And then I want to flip it over and I want to get the top as really nice as I can, as perfect as I possibly can. Again, these colors really don't show up well on a video like they do in real life. In real life, these colors really are a lot brighter than they are. We're going over one of my hand-mixed candy apple base coats, half silver and half gold. as I said before, I'm just improvising this as I go. I had a drawing on the wall, I threw it away, I got so frustrated. And I just want to kind of improvise this as I go. I got to try to do that outboard wing before the day is over here. And then I guess we'll pack it in for the day. I'm about halfway through the airbrushing job now, and I'm just playing with the colors, making them lighter and darker until I get a combination that I'm happy with. Not totally happy with this yet. I like the way the orange fades into the red, but I'm not happy about the way the red fades into the green. Not yet anyway, but I know an old trick for blending them in. And what I'll do on the top coat, the first coat that I put on here, I'll put a little bit of pearl right on the line. And that'll kind of blend it in. You won't see a harsh line then. And just as you get to the end of the red, notice I'm pulling the gun further and further away, the airbrush, so that I get a nice blend between the orange Now I just have to switch over to the orange. Actually, it goes pretty quick. I'm working on this a couple hours already, and it's going along pretty quickly. So. And what you want to try to do is get the paint on, and then as you get to an edge, just start pulling your hand further and further away until you get a nice blend, a nice edge. And then I'm outlining everything with black to give it a little accent, kind of a little accent stripe. As I said before, I wanted to do a little bit of a different paint job than the traditional, the Arrowhead specials that I always do. And this, one way or another, we're committed into this now. Whether we're going to wind up liking it or sanding it off and doing it over, I don't know yet. Time will tell. And because we're using an airbrush, it's very time-consuming to paint the plane. But on the other hand, we have the rest of this day. Now you can just get some idea. Again, I'm not trying to do a major dissertation here. Just get a little idea of what this paint job is going to be like. I have the bottom done. I'm just going to let this dry and then move it over to another station so I can work on the top. Do this all while the lead outs are hanging up here. Now every part, every color, of course, we've only used the airbrush on this. And every color we're trying to blend one color into the other color, so we get a nice blend. And the easiest way is let it dry in between coats. We're using 2 different colors of orange, 2 different colors of red, and 2 different colors of green to get these blends. And now that the thing is kind of shaping up, I won't say I like it yet, but it's growing on me, little by little. I already have another idea for a paint job, except I don't have any more planes to paint. Oh, we got the first coat airbrushed on the whole plane in one day here. That's pretty amazing. This went pretty quick, if I don't say so myself. What I'm going to do now is let this sit and dry overnight before I even start to handle it, because I did put a lot of paint on here all at one time. I come back to this, well, tomorrow I'll be down the shop, so it'll dry for a day. And we got Midgley coming down this week, so maybe on the end of this video or pretty soon, we'll see what Dave's new plane is starting to look like. Today, it seems like it's dried up real nice. What we're going to try to do today is fix. There's a little spot on the nose I have to fix. There's a couple little spots I want to touch up. I want to go over it real carefully and then get ready for the next step. But right now I have to do some thinking as to exactly what I want to do here. And tomorrow Midgley's due down here, so I don't want to start a job that I'll be in the middle of. But it looks like it dried up fairly nice, and so we can go on to the next step here. Now, this is just one of many little spots. You can see a little spot there. Little spot here I need to touch up with the red lead. Up by the nose scoop. And I dinged this myself, so there's no, no excuse here. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to take the thing apart piece by piece and look at each piece individually and find any little flaws, any little mismatches in the paint, anything I don't like, while I'm waiting for this to dry, and kind of just do a little touch-up just like we did on the other plane. Nothing's changed except this is a different type of paint job. And we'll, you know, in time we'll see if we're going to like this. I'm not sure I like this yet, but it's like I said before, it's growing on me little by little. Now what I'm going to try to do on this, just so I can explain to you, is back in the old custom motorcycle days when I owned the motorcycle business, I used to do a lot of custom painting on Harleys and on vans and guitars and boats and stuff, and one of the techniques that we used was called cobwebbing. And what I want to try on this, I've never seen a model plane that's been cobwebbed. The way you do cobwebbing is you put thick paint in the gun right out of the can, jack the pressure up as high as possible, and rather than spraying out spray, it sprays out, looks like string, it looks like silly string. And of course you use that. It just drops down onto the paint to give it a little textured effect like typewriter paint. And then you have to, of course, seal it in clear. Again, I've never done that on a model plane. This will be the first one, so we're going to try to give it a test. And as I say, it may or may not grow on me. If it doesn't, we have lots of sandpaper. Okay, this is what cobwebbing looks like on an up close on a macro lens. It's just dry paint. This is put right out of the can and sprayed with about 30 pounds of pressure. This is an old painting technique. What do I do? Just run a little test. In this case, I used a garbage can. Get the spray pattern the way you want it, and just go lay some cobwebs on the paint. That's all there is to it. Now, next step on this is we got to put a coat of clear on this. We won't get to do it today. It's too cold outside for us to dry. But to get a coat of clear on this to seal it up. Again, this is an old technique. I don't know how many people have ever seen this, or if you go back like I do, back to the 55 Chevys and 50 Mercurys. Well, this was a common way that they painted, and this is the first stunt ship I've done, so let's see if we can figure out how to make this look half decent. I don't know. We'll find out. Okay, I have a quart of 380S. I got a nice fresh gallon of 3608S. We're going to mix up using my jar method. Mix up the clear that's going to go on this plane. We're going to put one coat of clear, 1 quart, on the ship. Then we'll try to do it in 3 or 4 even coats. Now this is a little bit different because don't forget we don't have, at this point in time, the only thing we're trying to cover up is the cobwebs. The next thing I did is I pulled the plane all apart and jigged it up. I'm going to paint the individual parts now as a test. Spray the test clear on here, see how she looks after 1 or 2 coats. Again, suggestion, always do the little parts first, easier to refinish them than the main frame. Do the bottom of the main frame second, and do the top last, top of the outboard wing when you have everything wired up perfect. So what I want to do is just get the airbrush and airbrush around the edges here. This I won't bother with by the box, tip weight box, the same thing. But around the cowling I really do want to get that. Let's see, I got all little parts all jigged up and ready to go. I want to get some inside the cowling. Now another thing too, with using this type of a paint job, when I pull off the elevators, because I did these while they were on the plane, I have to get along the hinge line there where the black really didn't take. So I'll get all the little airbrush work, the little touch-up work done, and I'll be ready to start testing up some clear. I got the first coat of clear on some of the little parts now. Trying to see what the ultimate shine here, the finish, looks like. Have the rudder kind of semi ready to go here with 1 coat of clear. Now what has to be done on a normal cobweb job like this, you have to put a coat or even 2 coats of clear on and then knock everything down with 12 or 600 sandpaper, and then we'll decide how we're going to do the ink job and the lettering and I don't know, maybe a bird's head or something, who knows. Now, I really would like to take the flaps and elevators outside, but it's so cold. I'm trying to paint one thing and then fumigate the cellar, paint one thing, fumigate the cellar. This is really getting time consuming though, doing it. I don't know if you can see the shine on this, but it's really starting to look real nice. Now as I go around, I'm looking for any spots I miss. If I have a little problem, I just hit it with the black airbrush here and clean that right up. So far so good. It's growing on me.
Now this paint's been drying for a couple of days here. I want to tear up a little piece of sandpaper. This is 600. Again, just as we did on the previous videos, take some M600 and just run me a little test to see how hard the paint is and can I sand it down real easily. So what I want to do, I want to knock this first coat of clear down because of course all the little cobwebs stick up above the clear. Real quick, I don't want to do too much of a fancy job, and then I want to get the second coat on with a little bit of extra thinner. And after I have 2 coats on, then I'll start laying out what I hope will be the lettering, the ink lines, whatever other doodads are going to go on this plane. Okay, again, you just want to knock the high spots of the cobwebs down. Nothing special here. Okay, let's take a look at that. Get a little feel for just how much sanding goes into this first coat of clear. Nothing extensive now. In fact, we'll leave this. This even has these little low spots here. It won't matter. Next coat of clear will fill that right in. And you can see up on these other parts just how thick, how rough, kind of a rough sandpapery surface. That all gets knocked down. And then we'll put the next coat of clear on.
sempre sta contenta, più belle tutte belle, non è mai più bella. Amareggiare.
I pulled the tape off the canopy. I'm going to put the metal flakes on the canopy as soon as I can. Got most of the mainframe sand. In fact, I have all the mainframe sanded out. And I'm trying to come up with a little, you know, I like to put these little shields on. Some letrosets. I'm going to go buy some gold letrosets. And the other little things, maybe think about what I'm going to do as far as ink line goes. Because I'm improvising this job as I go, I don't have a map made up yet. I'm trying to take it one step at a time. Not get too far ahead of myself. In my mind's eye, I had this pictured a certain way, and it's coming out about the way I wanted it to. In fact, I'm kind of happy with it. As I said before, it's growing on me. It's starting to really grow on me good now. Anyway, we'll pick this up tomorrow, and I'll start working on the canopy. This morning I want to get this ready to do the canopy. I want to mask off around the canopy, get the flakes, the paint I want to do for that. And then while that's drying, I'll get ready to mask off the shields and do some letrosets, get out all my little things for decorating, and maybe get a good part or most of the decorating done today. Now, I've left on the 1/8" tape, so when I take this off, there'll be a little bit of a stripe around the canopy that'll be in the original gold, silver gold base coat. So what I'm going to do is mask off and leave this 1/8" stripe in here. Okay, I'm going to mix up the micro sequins the same way I did in the previous video. If you haven't seen that video, you might want to go back and look at it. No point repeating this. Then we're going to do some flakes in the canopy and then fog it in with a color that contrasts with the, you know, the main frame of the plane. And again, this is all kind of freehand and kind of improvised as we go until we get a color combination that we like. Now I always like to do the canopy a color that appears nowhere else on the plane. In other words, if you have a blue and white plane, I'd do the canopy green. A red and white plane, do the canopy blue or whatever. But the canopy doesn't appear anywhere else on the plane. That kind of sets it off a little more than normal. Now I got the first coat of flake on here. Usually I let this dry for about 15 minutes and then put a second coat on. And then we'll airbrush in around the edges. Okay, I'm going to start airbrushing in the canopy. And this is a blue-green color. It appears nowhere else on the plane, so we hope this is going to look decent. And then we'll edge it in black. That just gives it a little bit of a highlight. Feel like you're going to a Bob Ross painting course here. We just want the tip of the highlight to be in silver. Okay, we'll let that dry about 5 minutes and then edge it in black. The best way is to get it sprayed off and then just work your way on up into the canopy. Start off the tin foil and work your way up. Don't start in the canopy, start on the tin foil and work your way up. And now that has to dry a good couple hours before we work on the rest of it. Now, one of the tricks I like to get a nice crisp line here is I let the tape dry as long as possible, preferably overnight 24 hours, and then we'll peel all the tape and the tin foil out. If you've seen this whole series of tapes, you know how we've been using tin foil instead of paper to back mask. Now, one of the pain in the necks about doing any of the flakes, and I've said it before, is you wind up getting flakes on everything. And the next step is going to be, when I pull this tin foil out, I'm going to vacuum the whole shop up and get rid of all the flakes. Not that you could ever get rid of all the flakes in my life. Now what I'm going to do, I got all the tin foil off, I'm going to just leave the 1/8 inch tape on overnight now so I get a nice clean break when I pull it up. Well, what I'm going to do next is try to lay out some of what I want as far as letter sets and ink lines and the decorative thing. I guess we showed this earlier on in the video, a big box of letter sets. We're going to go through here and see what we have in inventory. And if we have to buy some, well, we'll go and buy some too. I'd like to start decorating this, get the shields on, whatever checkerboards we're going to have on here. Whatever, this is the point in time where, like an artist, starting to mix paint on the palette. I have to start laying this out and getting some ideas of exactly how I want to do this. What I'm doing, I'm laying out the outline of the bird's head, but I'm going to do it in checkerboard on this ship. And of course I made it the template. We used this earlier on in a video. And that'll just be the outline, and I've mirror imaged it on the other side. Heaven forbid that word, mirror image. So we have two birds' heads facing backward, and I'm going to do these up in checkerboard. So the next step, of course, is going to be to mask it off, back mask it, and when it dries, then ink in the checkerboards, just like we did on the previous videos. Now, in case you don't remember the trick, you rub the tin foil down on the tape, and the tape leaves an outline, and you just cut out whatever the shape it is, and in this case it's the shape of the bird's head, and you wind up with the tin foil. And here's one that we haven't filled in. Obviously you have to go around and fill it in with wide tape. This one's already finished. Anytime you're going to do white checkerboards, it pays to paint the silver first. Otherwise you run into a problem with the coverage. Even if you use the extra pigment, you need too much paint and you build up too much of a thickness. And this is just SIG silver. Just basing this out, and then we're going to spray it white. We'll mask off the other little shields and things that we want on this job. And all that silver is to block out what's underneath, and then we can shoot the white. Now we're just going to do kind of the same thing on the bottom with the two shields. We always leave a little bit of a checkerboard on the bottom so it balances out. And we're just going to do the same thing, back masking this. Maybe we'll kill a dog. The dog upstairs won't stop barking. I think he hears a mouse outside or something. So if you hear a dog being shot somewhere on this video, you know Poopsie went down the drain. Okay, we got the silver masked out. This is the dog, and he's going to get killed. I'm babysitting this dog. Poopsie, I'm going to kill you. Now stop barking. Pain in the neck. I'm going to spray paint him. Anyway, let's go back. Too many distractions around here today. Okay, we've got this painted silver. Now, we're going to put some on the nose, too. We'll just let this dry, and then we'll shoot everything. We're trying to get everything masked off so we can shoot everything with white at one time. Okay, I got the white sprayed on the top now. I'll give the bottom another 15 minutes to dry, and then I'll do the bottom white. Now we're going to leave the little 16th inch tape on as the edge until this dries overnight. We don't need that off there right now. We're going to go work on something else on the outside of the wing, lay out the letter-sets or whatever while this is drying. And then we'll spray the bottom white. Well, we're at the end of this tape. At this point in time, we're at the end of the time for this day. We're going to put the plane aside to dry overnight. We'll come back and work on this tomorrow. And we'll close out the video with a few of the pictures from one of our albums, as usual. This is the end of tape 14, and we'll pick this up on tape 15. We hope you really enjoyed it. And we hope you're getting a lot of good information. If you are, pass this tape around to your friends. Let's all learn from each other, help each other. Let's all enjoy building these things and enjoy flying them. And most of all, let's enjoy the friendship that comes from such a great hobby. And we'll close this out with the pictures, and we'll see you on the next tape. One of my favorite album photos. This is my baby lamb. This is from 1985. I had a baby lamb. The lamb is cuter than I am. Well, anything's cuter than I am. Love this lamb. He grew up to be a big beast, though. I mean, he grew up to be more pain in the neck than a wife. It was unbelievable. But he was cute there. This is the last photo I have of Harold Price when he was alive. This is Harold right here. And he was my mentor, and he was, it's just fitting that on the end of a finishing video like this, he basically taught me about everything I know about spraying and dope finishes and things like that. Got me started. Was one of the people that was instrumental in getting me to really want to have a nicely finished plane and not settling for second best. And he passed away, and we miss him a lot. I put his name on almost all my planes as one of the people I remember, paying back to the hobby more than he took out of it. Harold Price. Now, I can't remember this guy's name, but this, for the life of me, I can't remember his name. This guy hitchhiked to the Nats in '85 with Bob McDonald, slept in the car, and when he was flying and he was finished with the pattern, he was doing kung fu stunts out in the middle of the circle. I don't know, he thought he was Bruce Lee or whatever. Heck of a fun guy to be with. And looks like the dog might not make it through today. Come here, Poopsie. Gonna put this dog in a meat grinder. He's getting to be a pain. Some photos of Bob and Raleigh McDonald's planes from the mid-'80s, I guess. They had these twin-tail, pointed rudder type of things with all kind of neat hinging, and there was all kind of trick stuff on these planes, removable flaps and all kind of, I don't even remember, but I know there were many, many cute removable features. George Higgins, he was, at that point in time, he was Pampa president. This is from the mid-'80s. He's now one of the instrumental people in setting up the Nats each year and making it run well. He works well with Bruce Gifford. They both come from the same area of the country, New England. And at this point in time, he was competing. He was a competitor and basically paying back to the hobby through being a Pampa president and running a lot of contests. We had Paul Walker in younger years when he was basically into painting faces on the front of his plane and making them look like cartoon characters. I don't know what year this is from, but one of his early Bad News designs. This is the first plane Billy Suarez, we noticed this plane as the Jet. When he made his comeback to the hobby in the early 80s, this was the first plane he built, kind of a copy of his well-published F-4 Phantom. This is a picture of George Higgins just before dark trying to get in the last flight of the day up in Massachusetts. Here's Bob McDonald. This is a funny picture. This is Bob McDonald in my motel room with all the planes laying all over the bed and everything. Just look at the look on Bob's face. If you were on a jury, would you convict this man or what? Speaking of a guilty look on his face, look at this Don McClave guy. I mean, is this guy a spy or what? I mean, is he taking pictures with these eyes? He's going to run back to Paul Walker and tell him about all my trick ideas. Anyway, Don McClave gets the full credit for streamlining the newsletter operation. Basically made a giant contribution to the hobby through organizing the newsletter. And here he is on spy duty, stealing all my Allen bolts out of the head of the engine or whatever he was doing here. Paul Walker's personal coach. Now here's a picture of Mr. Ed showing us his teeth. Would you buy a horse with these teeth? Come on. Gene Martin in younger days. And probably my favorite person of all time, Lou Walgas, the man who started the move to Arizona. Sold all his stuff in Jersey, moved to Arizona, living the life of Riley. But Lou, we miss you, and It's not the same without you. Other guys get to win old-time stunt once in a while. That picture of Bob Barron, he was one of the first ones to use these headsets. And here's a funny story. Him and Mike Rogers were coaching each other, and they were using these headsets. And of course, there's only a few channels on the headset. So another unnamed person and myself bought a set of headsets, and we sat in a car far away where they couldn't see where what we were up to. And we dialed into their channel, and when Bob would give Mike a thing, pull out now, do this, we'd yell into the microphone, "Wah!" Scare them on the wing over, pull out, and we got them all screwed up. They were on the verge of crashing for the rest of the day. And then we turned them on to the joke, but I don't think many people still use headsets. Thanks to guys like me. This is Bob Barron's Monocoat Avanti, and what's significant about this picture, we've shown several pictures of it earlier on where the lead-outs were breaking and things were pulling apart. This plane was monocoat, very light, flew relatively well. He did well at the team trials with it, but of course if a plane comes up